Welcome to Stories from the Camp. It would be great if you could like, video and subscribe. Thank you and enjoy listening. It begins in the half-light of an overcast morning. The clouds hang low over the grey apartment blocks like a blanket that hasn't been shaken out yet. Autumn has already started to bite. Not the biting cold of January, but the damp kind. The kind that settles into your cuffs and under your scarf. It smells faintly of burning leaves, wet wool, and city dust that's turned to paste underfoot. Children walk in clusters, or alone, or trailed by parents who carry briefcases and rationed patience. Their shoes slap softly against the pavement. Still wet from the night's drizzle, most of the children are wrapped in layers. Thick tights, padded coats, scarves wound tight. Their faces are pink from the cold, and their breath fogs the air in small puffs like ghosts escaping gently. The school looms ahead, a rectangular building made of concrete, painted a color that was probably cheerful once, maybe yellow, maybe a soft green, but time and weather have faded it into something between grey and memory. There are no grand gates, just a fence with missing slats and a narrow walkway worn down by thousands of small feet. A bicycle leans near the entrance, the same one that's been there every day since September. The frame is rusted. The seat is torn. No one steals it. Everyone knows whose it is. Inside the air is thick. Not warm, not cold, just dense, like a coat you don't want to wear. It smells of old paper, floor polish, wet clothing, and cabbage. Soup rising faintly from the basement kitchen. The smell changes with the seasons, but in autumn it always smells like this. Familiar, heavy, lived dash in dot. The coat room is the first stop. A narrow hallway where a matron with stiff hair and tired eyes stands near a window cracked open just enough to let the chill in. Children pull off their boots, hang their coats, and tuck their scarves into sleeves. Everything is damp. The matron clucks her tongue when someone tracks in mud, but she doesn't mean it. No one really gets in trouble here. Not yet. There's a quiet routine to it all. Unlace your boots. Don't forget to take your change of shoes. Wipe your nose before class. Your mother put that scarf on for a reason. In the background, an old radio murmurs from a shelf in the teacher's lounge. Weather forecast, classical music, a voice reminding listeners to dress warmly and remain vigilant. No one's really listening, but it's there, a hum that settles in the walls like dust. The first bell rings at exactly 8:15. It's not a chime, not a melody, just a plain electric buzz that vibrates in the metal bones of the building. A signal more than a sound. Chairs scrape. Conversations end mid-sentence. A boy tries to finish his breakfast bread too fast and coughs. Someone drops a notebook. It all unfolds with a sleepy grace. In the classrooms. The desks are arranged in perfect rows, scratched wood, some with initials carved into the surface. Tiny acts of rebellion that the janitor never bothers to sand away. The windows are fogged up from breath and old heating pipes. Outside, you can just make out the tops of bare trees and the dull green roofs of garages. Each desk has its own scent, pencil shavings, ink, eraser rubber, and sometimes, if you're lucky, the ghost of an orange peel from someone's lunchbox the day before. The teacher enters, not with drama, but with the quiet rustle of wool against wool. She carries a notebook, a thermos, and the weight of 2 decades of repetition. Her glasses fog up as she steps inside, and she dabs them absently with a handkerchief that's older than most of her students. No one stands. This isn't a ceremonial place. It's not harsh, but it's not reverent either. It simply is. She writes the date on the blackboard with practiced grace. The chalk clicks softly against the surface. The letters are big, firm, a little slanted. Then silence. For a moment, the whole room holds its breath, a stillness that comes before the machinery of education starts humming. A girl in the back shifts in her seat. A boy at the front opens his textbook to the wrong page and doesn't notice yet. The radiator groans, the teacher clears her throat, and just like that, the day begins. But there's no real beginning, not in the dramatic sense. The school day is not a story with chapters. It is a thread that runs through the lives of children and adults alike, weaving boredom and comfort into one long loop. There is no climax, no plot twist, only grammar, multiplication tables, and the endless scratching of pens. There's something oddly soothing about it all, about knowing what comes next, about the sameness, the order, the coat room, the bell, the blackboard, the smell of soup that slowly grows stronger as the day stretches forward. Even the noise feels familiar. The ticking of the classroom clock that no one looks at, the slow page turns, the occasional soft cough, the teacher's voice like a train moving through fog. Outside it begins to rain again, a light patter. Against the windows, just enough to blur the world into watercolor. But inside, the school holds its shape. It's not a fortress. It's not a prison. It's just a place, a container for childhood, for repetition, for the slow erosion of seasons. The first period ends. Another bell, another scraping of chairs, another moment of noise wrapped in predictability. Children file out into the hallway, chattering softly now. The school doesn't wake all at once. It stirs gently, like someone turning over in sleep. In the corridor, someone has spilled a bit of water from a thermos. A teacher puts a cone over it. A boy draws something crude in the condensation on a window before it fades again. Someone smells soup. The bell sounds again. Just as before, that same short, stammering buzz. It marks nothing exceptional, only the turning of the page. Second period begins. On one classroom, it's literature. In another, mathematics. In a third, history, from a textbook so old that its corners have curled and yellowed like dried leaves. Yet the pages still turn, and the words still follow the same well-worn grooves. The chalkboard has already been half-erased. The outline of yesterday's diagrams faintly clings to the surface. As if reluctant to leave, the new day's lesson is scrawled over the ghost of the old names. Dates, formulas all marked with a kind of reverence only repetition can produce. The teacher's hand moves with practiced grace. She does not speak quickly. There is no rush, no sense of urgency. Every word lands softly, like dust. Her chalk squeaks sometimes, then settles into a rhythm. Tap, drag, tap, a dry, scratchy lullaby. Desks creak. Not all students pay attention. One girl traces the edge of her notebook with a finger, her mind miles away. A boy near the radiator watches a fly crawl along the windowpane. Another doodles in the margin of his textbook. A small tank or a crooked dog or the face of a teacher with exaggerated eyebrows. No one is disruptive, just quietly elsewhere, but that's how it goes. Soviet schools did not demand passion, they demanded presence. Not enthusiasm, simply a heartbeat, a pulse in a chair, a pencil in a hand. Sometimes the teacher stops and asks a question. Eyes dart, necks stiffen. Silence stretches like a string. Finally, someone answers. It may not be right, but it is enough. The teacher nods. The lesson resumes. Outside, the rain hasn't stopped. The windows sweat quietly. A faint breeze slips through a crack in the frame. The curtains, faded and stiff from dust, flutter just slightly. You can't hear the rain. The walls are too thick, but you can feel it in the air, in your bones, in the knowledge that recess will be indoors again. Somewhere down the hall, another teacher coughs, another class laughs, then hushes quickly. The school is not silent, it is humming. A gentle background of chalk, footfalls, pages, yawns, dot, and beneath it all, something begins to change. A scent, faint but growing dot soup. The smell arrives like a slow tide, creeping up the stairs and sliding through the halls. Not sharp or spicy, but round, blunt, a blend of cabbage, potatoes, and salt. Maybe a hint of dill. Maybe something metajacent. Though no one would say it with certainty, it wafts from the cafeteria in the basement, the stalovaya where the cooks, in their white uniforms and tired shoes, have been stirring since dawn. Huge metal pots bubble gently. Bread is sliced by the dozen. Tea brews in enamel kettles with rust on the rims. The students feel it first in their stomachs, a quiet gurgle, a shift of weight in chairs. Some glance at the wall clock. Only 20 more minutes, then 15, then 10, but time in a Soviet classroom does not flow. It seeps. The teacher continues. Her tone never changes. Not when explaining compound sentences. Not when reciting the names of long-dead generals. She has done this 1,000 times, to 1,000 faces. Some curious, some sleepy. Some barely there. She is not unkind, just tired. But even in her fatigue there is something gentle, something soft, a patience that has been worn thin but not entirely torn. The final minutes before lunch are always the slowest touch children. Fidget, pencils are dropped and retrieved, desks shift. Eyes flick toward backpacks, ready for the release dot. And then, at last, the third bell, it cuts through the room like a knife made of sound. It's not loud, it's not urgent, but it's final. Chairs scrape again. A few cheers slip out. The teacher waves them off without looking up. She collects her papers. Children file out like water down a hill. In the hallway, the scent of food grows stronger. It hangs in the air like steam. Students descend the stairs in messy clusters, their voices rising just slightly, not quite loud, but no longer hushed. The cafeteria is a rectangular room lined with long wooden tables, each one scarred by years of elbows, trays, and spilled compote. The walls are painted the same institutional color as the classrooms, something between cream and fatigue. A banner near the ceiling reads, in large red letters, "Eat well, study better." The line forms fast. Each child carries a tray, dented metal, always a little too cold. The food is ladled by women in white aprons and hairnets. They do not speak much, only sometimes, and only to correct a portion, or to scold someone who tries to skip ahead. The meal is the same as always: a bowl of soup, a slice of black bread, a piece of something pale and square that may once have aspired to be meat, a cup of tea, barely sweet, and yet it's comforting. The sameness, the warmth, the chance to sit, to exhale, to chew slowly, while the world hums on. Students eat with varying speeds and grace. Some scarf everything down in 3 minutes. Others nibble at bread corners and watch the steam rise from their bowls. The cafeteria hums with soft clatter, spoons against enamel, chairs shuffling back and forth, laughter in quick bursts, a teacher giving a gentle reprimand in the corner, and beneath it all, the steady tick of the wall clock. There is no music here, no decorations beyond slogans, but the warmth. Israel, so is the comfort. There is something deeply human about sitting shoulder to shoulder, sharing the same unremarkable soup. In a world of shortages, sameness becomes sacred. Once lunch ends, trays are stacked, crumbs are brushed aside. Some students sneak an extra piece of bread. Some drink the last of their tea with eyes closed, as if savoring a moment of quiet luxury. And then the day resumes, not with a bang, but with the dull buzz of the next bell. Children rise. Some sigh, some smile, some stretch. One boy tries to smuggle a spoon in his pocket for no reason in particular. The teacher sees. She takes it back without a word. Back in the classrooms, the air is slightly thicker now, soup-scented, sleepier, more relaxed. The window condensation has faded, and a sliver of pale sunlight slides across the floor. For a moment it glows softly against the floorboards, a reminder that outside the season is still turning. Inside, though the rhythm never breaks, the teacher returns to the board. She writes again, chalk taps. Students settle. Another lesson begins. The soup is behind them now, but the warmth lingers. The hour after lunch is unlike any other. Something shifts, not in volume. The school remains hushed, but in density. The air thickens, the floors seem softer, time stretches like molasses poured too slowly from a spoon. It is the hour when minds wander, the classroom once full of rustling. Papers and flicking pencils begins to drift. Even the teacher speaks more slowly now. Her voice, calm, even instructional, floats above the desks like steam above cooling tea. A girl in the second row is folding paper, not for any reason, just quietly beneath her desk. The corner of her math homework becomes a bird, then a boat, then, delicately, a 5-pointed star. Her fingers move instinctively, without thought. She doesn't even look at what she's doing. The star will end up in someone else's notebook, or a pocket, or on the windowsill left behind. Across the room, a boy stares at a crack in the ceiling, the same one he's stared at since September. It looks, if you squint just right, like a river winding through a blank country, or maybe a lightning bolt, or maybe nothing at all. There's a strange comfort in that, how certain cracks, certain stains, certain knots in the wood grain of your desk become companions over time. Little landmarks in a landscape where not much changes. The teacher continues. She writes on the board. Her chalk is worn down to a nub. When it breaks, she calmly tosses it into a box of others, all roughly the same size. She does not sigh. She does not react, she simply chooses the next and keeps going. On the windows, pale light filters in. The rain has stopped, but the world outside remains blurred. Water still beads on the glass, and the courtyard is soaked. A stray dog noses through the garbage bins near the back wall. It's always there, they say. No one remembers when it first appeared. Inside, the day marches on. A student raises his hand, not because he wants to, but because the teacher asked a question, and it felt safer to be seen trying than not at all. He gives the wrong answer. The teacher corrects him gently. No ridicule, no scolding, just a quiet nod, and the lesson moves forward. Somewhere near the back, a girl rests her chin on her palm. Her eyes stay open, but she's long since drifted. She's not thinking of anything grand, not love, not escape, not even summer, just the soft ticking of the wall clock, just the pleasant rhythm of words that wash over her without meaning. A boy draws in his notebook, not doodles this time, but small graphs, grids, things that resemble logic puzzles. He's inventing something, though he doesn't know what. He adds arrows, he erases them. It isn't rebellion, it's refuge. The teacher doesn't mind. She's taught enough to recognize the difference between defiance and drifting, she knows, is a form of survival. By now, the floor is littered with pencil shavings, bits of eraser rubber, and the curled corners of forgotten notes. The radiator clicks once, twice. A soft hissing sound begins, then fades. The room breathes. Now and then, someone coughs, always politely, as if asking permission. Someone's stomach growls. A girl covers her mouth and giggles, just barely. The clock strikes 2 o'clock. No bell, just the sound. Another half-hour remains before the next transition. No one rushes, no one protests. It simply is dot from the hallway. Distant footsteps echo. A door slams far off, muffled. The wind knocks once at the windows, but they do not open. And then, paper, a note is passed from one desk to another, carefully folded into a square with tiny writing inside. Passed by sleight of hand, between elbows, under textbooks. It contains a joke, or a question, or a drawing of the teacher with cat ears. It doesn't matter. The act of passing it, of choosing the right moment, of suppressing a smile. That is the point. A ritual, a bond, a flicker of light in the monotony. The teacher sees. Of course she sees. But she doesn't stop the flow. She chooses silence. Not indifference, just mercy. Back at the front, the board is full. Formulas, diagrams, a sentence underlined twice. The students copy what they must. Some do so with precision. Others simply mimic the motion of writing. Their pages filled with lines that barely register. But the hand moves. And that, for now, is enough. The room has its own rhythm, a subtle choreography, a shift of weight, the scratch of pen on paper, a sniffle, a flick of hair behind one ear, the thud of a textbook closing too soon. A boy near the window looks outside again. The rain has stopped. The clouds have broken just enough to let a thin beam of sun spill across the concrete yard. It catches on a puddle, turns silver, and disappears again. And then another whisper of motion. Someone opens their desk and retrieves a candy. Smuggled, of course, carefully unwrapped. The paper is crinkled slowly, gently, as if trying to disguise its own existence. The smell of caramel fills a 3-foot radius. Others notice, eyes flicker, but no one tattles. The teacher, still writing, pauses just once, then continues. At the back of the room, a girl has written her name over and over again in the corner of her notebook. Her full name, her name with a boy's surname added to it, her name as if she was someone else entirely. It's not love, not really, just daydreaming, a rehearsal for something far away. These are the minutes that fade into each other, the ones we barely remember, and yet they are the ones we return to when we can't sleep. Not the lessons, not the grades, but this, the sound of chalk breaking, the whisper of notebook pages turned in rhythm, the dim light on your desk, the way the classroom smelled like paper and boiled wool. This is how memory works. It collects the smallest things and saves them quietly. Eventually, the period ends. Another bell, another gentle shuffle, another drift down the hall like leaves on a breeze. Some children linger, some rush, some forget their pencils entirely and return 10 minutes later as if they'd left behind a piece of themselves. But in truth, they leave pieces everywhere. Little ghosts in the form of folded stars, initials in desk corners, and the warmth of tea rising through a thermos lid. The classroom empties. The light outside begins to dim, and the day continues gently into its last hours. The afternoon light fades slowly, almost reluctantly, as if even the sun is hesitant to disturb the stillness of the classroom. The walls have turned the color of weak tea, that muted yellow that only appears when sunlight must pass through both clouds and dusty windows. A teacher's voice continues, steady but worn, carrying across the room in a thin, tired thread. Some children still listen, or appear to, their eyes fixed on the blackboard, but their minds are no longer anchored. Attention drifts like a curtain swaying gently in a breeze. It is the last lesson of the day, and the room knows it. The air has changed, not in scent, but in pressure, heavier, slower. The pencils have dulled. The notebooks, still open, are no longer filled with answers, but instead rest quietly, like old newspapers. A boy chews the end of his pencil, staring at the date scrawled on the board. October is nearly gone, and November waits with its frost and darker mornings. The radiator ticks softly beside him, not warm enough to comfort, but just enough to notice. Somewhere in the corridor, a pair of shoes squeaks rhythmically. Probably the janitor making their final rounds with a wooden mop and a bucket that smells faintly of bleach and wet rags. The classroom clock hums faintly. The second hand jumps forward with a muted clunk. 3 minutes left. The teacher, with no real conviction, wraps up the final point of the lesson. Her chalk breaks once, then twice, and she doesn't bother replacing it. She turns instead, wipes her hands on a cloth she keeps folded beside her register, and sits. The silence that follows is not formal, not anticipatory, just wide, thick, like the hush after snowfall. Then the final bell, the same buzz as always, flat and utilitarian, but somehow different now. It's not louder, it just means more. It signals not just the end of a lesson, but the release of bodies that have been sitting still for hours. Chairs scrape back in unison, not rushed, not chaotic, but not slow either. A collective motion, the sound of energy that has been caged too long. Backpacks are zipped, notebooks closed, pencils stuffed into pencil cases too quickly. One girl drops her ruler and doesn't bother picking it up. Another has been packed since the previous period, her satchel already resting on her lap, ready. The teacher says nothing. She watches them go with a tired smile, the kind that has been repeated thousands of times over the years. Neither warm nor cold, just accepting. A few linger, slow to move, not because they want to stay, but because they don't quite know where they're going next. In the hallway, the lights flicker once. The coat room hums with motion. Children file in, unhooking their damp jackets and scarves from the pegs where they hung all day like limp flags. The room smells of wool, wet leather, old floor polish, and something faintly sweet. Maybe someone spilled juice before lunch and forgot. Scarves are wrapped, mittens tugged on, boots are stamped into place with practiced force. There are no mothers waiting here, no long goodbyes, just routine, habit, a quiet, unconscious ballet of children. Returning to themselves, the matron nods to them as they pass. She doesn't speak, but they all know her face, soft around the eyes, hard around the mouth. She adjusts a crooked scarf on a small boy without a word, then lets him go. Outside, the world has darkened. The sky is a low sheet of steel, brushed faintly with purple at the edges. The wind is not sharp, but it carries the promise of sharper days to come. Leaves brown, brittle, wet, stick to the pavement in loose patterns. Some flutter underfoot, some cling to coat hems like autumn's last attempts to stay remembered. The walk home is quiet. Children travel in groups, but even their voices are lower now. Laughter is soft, occasional. Conversations drift in, and out of silence, feet scuff the sidewalk. A few take shortcuts between buildings, cutting across muddy courtyards and through patches of grass gone yellow and bald. Others follow the streets, stepping over puddles that reflect grey windows and crumbling balconies. A girl walks alone. Her bag bumps against her back in rhythm with her steps. She looks up at the bare trees, their branches like veins scratched. Across the sky, somewhere a crow caws once, then is silent. The city is not loud. The traffic is sparse, just a distant rumble. Somewhere a radio plays a sad accordion tune through a third-floor window. A boy kicks a bottle cap down the road, for a full block before it disappears into a gutter. No one speaks of school. No one recounts lessons. They've already folded those hours up and stored them somewhere behind their eyes. The day dissolves slowly. Apartment blocks rise like cliffs on either side. Rusted swings sway in empty courtyards. Laundry, long since dried, flutters limply on balconies. As each child turns toward home, the group thins. One by one, they disappear behind doors, up stairwells, into shadows. The silence grows deeper. A single window glows with kitchen light. Inside, someone peels potatoes. A kettle whistles. The smell of onions frying begins to bloom. A mother wipes her hands on an apron and asks how the day went. The child shrugs, says normal, and slips off his shoes. Another day, not memorable, but not forgotten either. These days stack on each other like bricks. They build something invisible, something lasting. Back at the school, the building stands empty now. The coat room is quiet, the halls dim. One light buzzes overhead, The classrooms sit still. Desks tidied, blackboards half-wiped. A stray paper star rests beneath a radiator. It will stay there for weeks. The janitor hums as he locks the front doors. His keys jingle, metallic and small. He pauses, just once, to look up at the darkening sky. It smells like snow, not today, but soon. The last leaf falls. The corridor smells faintly of soup. The building stands still. It is Saturday morning, and everything is exactly where it was left. The chairs remain tucked under desks with quiet obedience. The blackboard holds the final chalk lines from Friday, half erased by a student in a hurry, the date still visible. In smudged, white strokes, no children arrive, no feet echo down the halls, no bells sound. The coat-room is dark, the hooks empty like arms hanging loose by their sides. Scarves forgotten the day before droop like sleeping animals. A single mitten sits on a shelf like it's waiting to be claimed, but it will not be, not today. The hallways stretch without movement. The floors, usually scuffed and marked by wet boots and hurrying steps, lie clean and waxed, interrupted only by a trail of dried footprints from the janitor's path the evening before. The air holds stillness like a breath held too long. It smells faintly of chalk dust, floor polish, and the metallic scent of cold water from radiators that hiss. In steady rhythm, despite the silence, the janitor is the only one here. He walks slowly, not because he is tired, but because there is no need to move fast when no one is watching. He carries a broom, a faded cloth, a ring of keys that jangles softly like wind chimes. He is part of the school's bones, now always there, always quiet. Like the ticking of a distant clock, you only notice when everything else has stopped. He opens a window to let in the morning air. It smells of wet leaves, faraway chimneys, and the last breath of autumn before winter arrives. A gust stirs the curtain, sends a few papers fluttering from the teacher's desk like birds startled from a wire. The papers settle near the radiator. He doesn't pick them up yet. He just watches them fall. On Saturdays, time doesn't flow. It sits. Each room is a still life, paused mid-sentence. A notebook left open with notes half finished. A pencil lying across its spine. A geometry compass sits at the edge of a desk, one leg dangling into space. A chalkboard sponge, grey with use, sleeps on the sill, drying in a patch of soft light that moves across the room like a sundial's shadow. There is no reason for noise, no one to impress, no deadlines, just dust. The kind that settles gently, like silence with weight. The kind that remembers. In the teacher's lounge, an enamel mug rests near the sink. It holds the faded ring of yesterday's tea, now cold, now bitter. A cardigan is draped over the back of a chair. A stack of grade books sits like a tower of small judgments. No one will open them today. The teachers are elsewhere, at home, at the market, or still in bed, their bodies recovering from 5 days of quiet command. The school allows them to disappear. It forgives their absence. It carries their presence like an aftertaste. The gymnasium is locked, but through the glass doors you can still see the red lines on the floor, faded from years of sneakers and shouted instructions. A basketball rests in the corner, flat, lopsided, forgotten. The rope ladder hangs limp. The scoreboard still shows a number. though no one remembers which team it belonged to. The silence here is deeper, somehow thicker, as if the echoes from past games are still hiding in the beams above. Somewhere down the corridor, the janitor turns on a radio. Low, tinny, it crackles through a military march, then into a folk song, something about birch trees and longing. The sound slips into the stairwell, climbs the steps like a ghost. With nowhere to go, it doesn't disturb the building. It just joins the stillness. In the art room, jars of cloudy water hold stiff brushes. A papier-mâché model of Sputnik sits on the windowsill, its silver paint peeling. The walls are pinned with student drawings, suns with faces, crooked tractors, villages with purple clouds. One picture, drawn in crayon and thumbtacked to the corkboard, shows the school itself, tall, proud, with flowers in every window and smiling children holding hands. It is not accurate, but it is sincere. The janitor pauses there for a moment, looks at the drawing, then straightens a corner that had curled upward. He nods once to no one and moves on. The bathrooms are cold. Echoing the tiles reflect light in dull, repeated patterns. A sink drips once every 40 seconds. A store door creaks open in the draft. He doesn't bother closing it. The school is not watching today. In the library, the books sleep with their spines turned inward. A dust layer rests on top like snow on rooftops. A copy of How the Steel Was Tempered lies open on a table, spine cracked, a page corner folded. The stamp inside reads 1981. The library smells like varnished wood, glue, and pages too long, untouched. The silence here feels thicker than in the rest of the school, like a soft blanket tucked around an old woman's shoulders. Saturday is not for learning, it is for resting. The janitor finishes his round. He sweeps the last hallway with broad, slow strokes. He hums the tune that was on the radio earlier, just barely, not because he likes it, but because it fits. It belongs to this place. He doesn't speak, he rarely does. The building listens anyway. He collects his broom, folds his cloth, turns off the lights room by room. As he walks back toward the entrance, the sound of his steps seems louder, not because he's hurrying, but because the school is letting him go. One by one, the windows fade from grey to reflection. The courtyard outside is empty. No children, no voices, just wind, just leaves, just the slow breath of a space that once held hundreds and now holds none. At the front door he puts on his coat. It is old, thick, smells faintly of tobacco and sawdust. He locks the door behind him with 2 clicks. Always 2, the same every week. The school remains behind him, full yet empty, echoing yet quiet. He walks away slowly, his boots crunching the frost, beginning to form at the edge of the sidewalk. Above the sky is white with clouds, and somewhere far off a train whistles once, thin and high. The building doesn't react. It stands as it has for years, watching, waiting, holding. Inside, the rooms rest. The desks do not move. The chalk does not write. The mittens stay on the shelf. The radiator clicks once more, then goes silent. A final puff of warm air rises, invisible. The dust, still settling, dances briefly in the last light before the window fogs over. The school sleeps.